Good evening, everyone. We are live. Welcome to Kansas Library's very first virtual small business expo. We're honored and excited to have you here and to start this journey together. Our goal today is to have a dialogue with you, with local agencies, with entrepreneurs in our community, to promote your work, understand your challenges, and to align with you so that we can offer resources and services that you can need if you want. We want to see your business grow. We want to see our community grow. So in the next few weeks, we will be hosting this live event every Thursday at 7 o'clock in an effort to connect directly with you. Please send us your comments, questions, or ideas. We'll release them right away. If you want to find more about upcoming events and topics, visit our website. You can also register with our events page, www.atl.org/events. Today, we have the pleasure and the honor to talk with Wayne Titus about a very important topic, the Paycheck Protection Plan. Welcome, Wayne.
Hi, Sarah. I'm backstage, and I noticed that the audio has been tuning in and out. And so, Sarah, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure our viewers can experience this. Now, Sarah, when I logged in, your voice is better. Let's hear you chat right now.
Can you hear me now?
Interesting. Fascinating. There's like weird technology little things. Here's what I'm going to do, Sarah. I want to you did such a lovely job, but unfortunately the technology gremlins got us a little bit. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring Wayne in right now, but I'm going to ask you to share that again because I think our viewers will be able to hear that better. So let's bring in Wayne. I'll get out of the way and we'll see if that audio works okay.
Welcome, Wayne.
Hi, Sarah.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. As I said before, this is our very first virtual small business expo, and we're so excited and honored to have you here and to have everyone that has tuned in to this time. We are excited. In the next weeks, we're going to be talking about different subjects related to small businesses. We want to be able to promote our small business owners' work, understand their challenges, and align ourselves. And as part of these efforts, today, being the first one, we wanted to start with very important topic, the Payment Protection Plan. And thank you so much for coming and helping us with this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And you know, if you've just started your small business or you've been in business for a period of time with your small business, you're probably like most of us in small business, which is basically going about our business as usual and overnight wondering how we're going to stay in business.
That's right.
The impact of COVID-19 has been broad and the response of Congress has been pretty swift, but I'll say it hasn't been consistent as far as these programs go. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about the Paycheck Protection Program. There's some guidance that's coming out on Friday. It's the 19th interim ruling as it relates to the Paycheck Protection Program. So they came out with it really rapidly on April 4th. They made a huge amendment on June 5th, and they're doing some more clarifications that are going to come out on Friday. I'm going to give you a preview.
Wonderful. And I know that you speak from experience because aside of doing what you do, which is helping entrepreneurs, you yourself are an entrepreneur. You are the founder of AMDG Financial, and you also have a book. The name of your book is, what is the name of your book here?
You got it?
Well, I have it here, but tell me. Yes.
It's The Entrepreneur's Guide to Financial Wellbeing.
Right. That sounds perfect. So I know that you have a PowerPoint presentation, and I think that we can follow that. But I also want to remind our viewers that this is live, so you can access Wayne directly. You can tell us if you have questions, you have comments, or anything that you can add to the dialogue. We are more than happy to include you in the program and hear from you. So let's start with this, just as an opening, Wayne.
Sure.
can you tell us what is the payment protection plan and who can apply and what's going on with this?
Well, the Paycheck Protection Program is one small piece of the CARES Act. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of that in just a second and then dive into some more detail. But just to give you an idea, the CARES Act was 868 pages of legislation. A lot of that, didn't specifically impact small businesses, but there was a number of sections. I didn't read the whole thing, but I did peruse the 868 pages, and I pulled out what specifically impacted small business. Paycheck Protection Program is probably one of the biggest sections that impacted small businesses. There's emergency disaster loans, there is payroll tax credits, and then there's some other requirements of making sure that small employers know and understand that under the CARES Act, they are also subject to some federal rules as it relates to sick leave, family sick leave. So the Family Medical Leave Act is now applicable to smaller businesses. So if it's not something you're familiar with, if you have an employee that's got some issues or needs to be off due to COVID, you've got some requirements that you may need to look into with an attorney. So I just want to make sure you know and understand that's all part of the CARES Act. We're going to just dive into the Paycheck Protection Program, and of course we can talk about other questions you might have as it relates to unemployment and things like that.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have a lot of questions about this because, as small businesses will have these kind of questions related to human resources and how do I handle this this specific situation with an employee. But why don't you start with your presentation and kind of guide us through them, and then as we receive these comments and questions, I will ask them. Sure,
that sounds great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about paycheck protection loans. What do you need to know? The first thing is the CARES Act is in basically three sections. As I mentioned, it's 868 pages. Keeping American workers paid and employed, assistance for American workers, families, and businesses, and then supporting America's healthcare system in the fight against the coronavirus. Title III isn't really that applicable. Most of what I'm going to talk about tonight comes from Title I, the section on paid and employed. The Paycheck Protection Program is in this section 1102. And then there's this piece called loan forgiveness. So these two sections go together. You can get a paycheck protection program, and then if you use it in a particular way, it's a loan really, but if you use it in a particular way, you can apply for loan forgiveness and have that wiped out. You don't have to pay it back. So it's a wonderful thing, for small business to get a loan and then not have to pay it back. I will say that if you get the loan and you can't use it for expenses, or you don't have enough expenses to reach the full forgiveness, we'll talk about this later, that you can still use it as a loan. It's a very low cost loan that's paid back over a period of time. It's a loan at 1%. If you have it forgiven, you don't owe any interest on that amount. Then you have section 110 or 1110, which is the emergency disaster loans and other SBA loans. You can apply for those under SBA.gov. And then if you have an SBA 7A loan, there are certain situations where you actually may qualify and are receiving subsidy for certain loan payments. So let's just talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. So the first tranche was about $349 billion. It ran out after 13 days. It was a real money grab. And you probably saw in the news headlines there was a number of publicly traded companies that actually applied for and got huge loans through the program and were kind of pressured to give that money back. There's probably other companies out there that still have money that they maybe should have given back. And the Small Business Administration and the Department of Treasury kind of put people on notice. Look, if you didn't deserve a loan or you shouldn't have had one, you better pay it back right away. And so they had a second round of funding, which was between $770 and $870 million. And so that round actually went much smoother. And in fact, it lasted much longer and it was twice as much money. So it didn't disappear in 14 days. I think because of the news coverage and things like that, people hesitated at that point when they learned about it to actually make application. I still have entrepreneurs that are calling me, asking me, should I make an application for a Paycheck Protection Program loan? So let's talk about who qualifies. Small business concerns that meet the SBA size standard qualify. If you're a 501c3 or a tribal business concern, or you meet some of these other criteria like the NAICS code that begins with 72, that's accommodations and food services. If you have more than one physical location and you employ less than 500 people per location, you can apply. But I think most people on this call, in this meeting, will be sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed people, and you qualify. So if you haven't applied for one, you can certainly do that. The details of the Paycheck Protection Program have changed. When they first came out on April 4th, they followed certain guidelines. That has been updated, and on Friday, the Department of Treasury and the Small Business Administration will issue the 19th interim rule as it relates to the Paycheck Protection Program. So if you're trying to stay up to speed on the changes that are happening and the clarifications that are going on with the Paycheck Protection Program, you're probably as frustrated as I am, and maybe more so, because you're seeing these changes are happening so quickly. This morning, we had the presentation finished, we sent it off, and within an hour, we found out they're doing a publication on Friday, and there's some additional changes. So we're going to try to cover those with you this evening. So basically, there's a calculation that's done to determine how much are you eligible for. And that's basically take your 12-month payroll average, multiply by 2.5 times that average monthly payroll. And that is the top end of the loan that you can get. Now, there's some nuance to that. If you're self-employed or you have workers that earn greater than $100,000, you have to cap that calculation at $100,000. So this isn't so easy as just taking your average monthly payroll and doing a calculation. It's more complex than that. There's a limit per customer. You can choose now to pay back over an 8-week period if you got your loan before June 5th, or if you're going to apply for a loan now, you'd be under the 24-week covered period instead of the 8-week covered period. So if you got a loan earlier, you might be under 8 weeks, but you can choose to extend now to 24 weeks. This guidance just came out last week, the extension, and the loan will be fully forgiven as long as you've got at least 60% of that forgiven amount used for payroll. Previously, it was 75%. They reduced it to 60%, and the other 40% can be used to pay off, to pay rent or utilities or mortgage interest. Okay, so what a lot of people are really interested in is the fact that when you make the application, you can also receive, you can also get loan forgiveness, like have that loan completely washed out, wiped out, and forgiven. To do that, you have to make application. You have to make forgiveness application. And until just this week, the loan application forgiveness form was 6 pages, and it was extremely complex. It was very difficult for normal business folks to actually understand it and read it and get through the calculations in order to make application for forgiveness. They have come out with an easy version. Just like any government form, when it says easy, you have to be a little skeptical. It's not completely easy, but it's much easier than the 6-page application. So if you meet the criteria here, you can qualify for the easy application for forgiveness. They're opening up. I just got notification, that they're potentially doing another round of funding for the small business, for the Paycheck Protection Program. Right now, it's a proposal in Congress. It's not a done deal yet, but it's possible that there's going to be a second round of Paycheck Protection Program loans, and that second round is for people that had a Paycheck Protection Program loan and lost at least 50% of their revenue. So they're trying to make it very specific, and where they may not have been able to bring people back to work yet. And they're trying to help keep businesses afloat where they can't get back to work right away, or they've got reduced income even now, which of course many businesses do. The salons in Michigan just opened. The gyms aren't open yet. And so these people are still well into their 8-week payback period, but they may need another round of funding here. And so there's some talk about that. You can apply for the Paycheck Protection Program by visiting SBA.gov. There's a form that you can download. You can find participating lenders that are dealing in Paycheck Protection Program loans. I would urge you first to go to the bank that you have your business account with. They will be the ones that you want to check with first, because a lot of lenders are not providing the same opportunity to apply for a PPP loan if you're not a business client of that institution. There are other banks out there that are making, and other lending institutions that are making loans to people that don't have banking relationships with them. So those folks are out there. You can go and find out who the participating lenders are, but you might want to start with your own bank first. Now, the important thing is, once you get your Paycheck Protection loan approved, that money is going to be deposited directly into your business account. And that's one of the reasons why, if you're using your own bank, it's pretty easy. I think the important thing is you have to make sure you have good documentation. You have to have good records, especially if you're going to go for forgiveness with this loan. You have to plan how you're going to spend the money within that 24-month period. That actually is not as burdensome as 8 weeks was. So you have 24 weeks now to spend that money. The plan for that is not as hard as it was when you were planning for 8 weeks. Many people are suggesting opening up a separate bank account and depositing the funds in there. And then as you're spending the money, pulling those funds out and documenting that all together, on a spreadsheet and a folder, however you do documentation. Make sure you track those eligible expenses well. Keep copies of checks, invoices, and other documents. And then once you do that, you're going to have that opportunity to apply for forgiveness. And you've got two forms: that regular form, which is 6 pages, and hopefully you meet the requirements of the easy form. It's much simpler. That's what I would look at first. Follow the instructions and see if you've got any, if you got any questions or concerns, and you don't think you qualify here. Check with your advisor first before you try to fill out the 6-page form. There are other loans that are available. As I mentioned, the disaster loans are out there. You can go to SBA.gov and click on Emergency Disaster Loans, and you can make application there. There's SBA Express Bridge Loans. These are, smaller amounts, but you can get up to $25,000 pretty quickly. And then there's the Debt Relief Loan, which basically allows and provides an opportunity to, cover 6 months of principal and interest and associated fees for that 7A loan. So that's the PPP in a nutshell. How about questions or?
Yeah, well, thank you. That was amazing. You put it together. It's pretty complicated, I should say, but at the same time, you made it pretty simple. It looks understandable.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, this is the time we're asking our viewers, if you have questions or comments, if you want to connect directly with Wayne, please send those to us. I do have a question for you related to the 1099 employees or self-employed people.
Yeah.
This question, if they have not applied yet to file normal claim before the Payment Protection Program, can they do that? Can they still? So
you're talking about as a 1099 contractor? Are you talking? You're asking the question about unemployment?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So if you're, and this is an area where there's still quite a bit of confusion. If you're self-employed, you get a 1099 from because you're a contract worker or gig worker, you can apply for unemployment in the state of Michigan. That's not something that was previously provided as a benefit when you're self-employed. It's only because of the CARES Act they've expanded the unemployment program to allow self-employed individuals to apply for unemployment. You have to be able to provide some documentation of earnings that you had in the prior year. So, they're going to be asking maybe for copies of your tax returns if you file a Schedule C or those kinds of things. You're going to need to provide some documentation. But if you're eligible, you're also then eligible for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, which is another program that's also within the CARES Act. It's within the second article that we didn't go into in the presentation, but that second article provides for the expansion of unemployment and the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, which is $600 a week. So as an example, in Michigan, if you qualify for the largest weekly benefit, I think it's $362, you can also then qualify for the federal Pandemic Unemployment Assistance of $600. That's $962 a week. So it goes a pretty long way to make up that difference for many self-employed individuals. So it's not going to maybe completely make you whole, but it's gonna help.
Yeah, I think that the question was related to, of course, is for contractors and people that are self-employed. They use the 1099, but sometimes I'm thinking about people that are interpreters, for example, and they work together, so they can apply under this. But do they have to qualify as a small business in order to access the PPP? And not only the, because we're talking about two different things.
That's right. So you've got the unemployment programs, which are available to the self-employed and 1099 contractors. You also have the PPP program, which is based on the size of your payroll, or if you're a Schedule C business, a small Schedule C business, it's based on the income that you received. So if you filed a tax return and you had a Schedule C business, or you're an S Corp and you received, profits in your business, that is what is going to start the calculation of what the benefit is. So yes, you can apply for PPP if you have, those. If you didn't have any earnings, or you didn't file a tax return to prove that you had earnings, you're not going to qualify for PPP.
All right. That is good to know. Okay. Well, we have some questions here, and again, we are asking if you, our viewers, if you have questions or things that you would like to share, this is the time where you can do it. I wanted to talk with you a little bit more about how these came to be. You just mentioned on Friday we're going to have something new that is going to change a little bit the way that we're looking at, and this is changing on the go. Do you expect that we're going to have more of these changes coming?
It's very possible that there's going to be more changes coming. When you get a loan like this from the federal government and then they forgive it, one of the things that Congress had in the CARES Act was that you weren't going to be taxed on this loan money. But the way it's turning out, and the clarifications that they put out so far, or that Treasury has put out so far, and the Internal Revenue Service has said, you will be taxed on this if you have this forgiven. So basically, you're going to pay the tax on this amount if you've had it forgiven. So you need to be aware of that. That's not a terrible problem, right? I mean, you got something at least, and you might have to pay tax on it. But I don't think that was really Congress's intent. I don't speak for Congress, but the American Institute of CPAs, I'm a CPA, but the American Institute of CPAs, they are encouraging Congress to go back and clarify for the Internal Revenue Service how this should be treated, whether it should be taxed or not taxed, because the AICPA, their interpretation of the law is it is not to be taxed. So we are going to see potentially some additional changes and clarifications down the road. So I'd say stay tuned. The advice I've been giving my clients is, you don't want to, if you make application and you receive an amount, you want to be smart about it. You don't want to just, start paying things if it doesn't make sense to bring workers back because you don't have any business. Don't do that. Do what's right for your business. Don't necessarily worry completely about the forgiveness piece. You've now got 24 weeks to incur the expenses And then you have another, I think it's 10 weeks after that 24-week period to make application for forgiveness. So until that, the forgiveness time period, that's 34 weeks away if you get your PPP tomorrow. That's a long time away. So you don't need to make any rash decisions about this. But I would say if you're eligible and you feel like you need to apply for the loan program, do it because it is helpful.
Okay. All right. We are going to, I would like to let everybody know that we will put some of the links to apply in the comments. We do have a question. It's from Brian Mortimer. Thank you, Brian. Is there a list of banks that are still making loans? We have heard that several have declared that they're not receiving any new applications for loans. And if you also can clarify, that there's can you go to a bank where you don't bank and get this type of help?
Yeah, I shared in the presentation that if you go to sba.gov, there's a resource there that provides a list of participating lenders. There were a number of lenders that stopped making Paycheck Protection Program loans during this time period. They don't have to make the loans. So I would say first check with your local bank that you bank with. And after that, then go ahead and check with this list. And on that list, you're going to find that it's not just banks, but I know some large mortgage companies are doing some PPP lending. You don't have to be a client of theirs in order to do that. I know there's other banks that are, in other states that are doing lending. So you just have to kind of check that list and start making some phone calls. But the application is done actually with the bank directly.
Perfect. We have another question. So, and I'm not going to put it in, but this is related to unemployment.
Okay.
I was already in unemployment. Do I still get the extra 13 weeks and $600? And I think you did mention that, but can you expand a little bit more?
Yeah. So depending upon when you applied for or when you were unemployed, the period of unemployment was expanded to 26 weeks. And there's the potential that you should qualify for the pandemic unemployment assistance, because if you're already on unemployment, I believe that you also qualify for that. I will say that many states are behind in the implementation of these programs. Michigan was one of the first programs that was online and available, and it wasn't without some hiccups. But I think they've done a pretty good job. Although I'm hearing from people that they're still very difficult to get a hold of. On the phone lines and to ask questions for. But if you were working for a company and then you were made unemployed, you can apply directly on the website. If you were self-employed, you're going to have to, there's an application on the website, but it's going to be separate.
All right, thank you so much. I have another question here. I think you also covered these during your presentation, but do PPP loans cover paid sick leave?
PPP loans cover payroll, benefits, and I believe they can also cover paid sick leave. Okay. Yep, it's a payroll related benefit. So yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Now, this is another one. My small business is a seasonal business whose activity increases from April to June. Considering activity from that period would be a more accurate reflection of my business operation. However, my small business has not fully ramped on February 15 of 2020. Am I still eligible?
Yes, you are eligible, but the calculation is different because you're seasonal. So you can't just take 12 months worth of payroll and then take the average and then multiply by 2.5. There's a specific allocation that you need to do in consideration of the fact that you're seasonal.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to make a pause here. We wanted to include some of the resources that your local library has to offer for everybody as a local business. So right now we're going to take some time and welcome one of our librarians who has prepared a small video showing you one resource that you should know about.
everyone. It's Sarah, librarian and outreach specialist, here with your KDL Connection. Kent District Library has all the resources for your workforce development needs, from Career Online High School to prepare you for the career that you want, to our databases and collections that will help you grow your small business. Let's see how we can connect with today's topic.
Let's begin at our website, kdl.org. And from there, we'll find that we have Learn and Research, our online and research databases. Underneath these categories, you'll find listings for many topics, but we'll resort to just choosing business for tonight. Under our business databases, you'll see that we have many different topics: A to Z databases, business book summaries, ebook business collection, and entrepreneurial studies source. But tonight, we're going to be using our Small Business Reference Center. In the Small Business Reference Center, you'll see that there are different areas, industries, business basics, and startup and business plans to help you grow your small business. Tonight, we'll be looking for more PPP resources, and we'll use the basic search to begin. Simply type your search term into the bar at the top of the screen and click Search. The results returned will fall under different categories. You'll be able to see the results listed on the left-hand side of the screen. You can sort by all results, magazines, reports, books, and then you can choose which type of result you would like to use. You can also limit by publication date in order to choose only the most current publications on your topic. This allows us to see that there are 189 magazine articles that have been published regarding PPP just in 2020. We hope that those resources will help you understand the topic even more.
Thanks for being here with us today, and I hope that you'll join us next week for another Small Business Expo where we'll share more KDL connections.
Thank you to Sarah for that wonderful business resource. We will continue to share these resources with you in the next coming weeks. As a reminder, if you want to participate for the next ones, please visit www.kdl.org/events. You can register, let us know that you're going to come here. Next week, we are starting something new. It's going to be only half hour of a conversation with our guest. And the rest of the hour, so 30 minutes, you will be invited for a networking time where we can get to know each other a little bit more, share resources, maybe promote some of our businesses, and just make a community where we can all share. So you're all invited. Please join us next week, Thursday at 7 o'clock once more. We will have somebody from Local First, Miss Hannah Schultz. But we're going to continue our conversation with Wayne Titus, our wonderful presenter today, who has done an amazing job simplifying the payment protection program for us. We have some questions for you, Wayne. So can we put him in the screen again?
Absolutely. Ready to go.
Yep. Some of these questions are they're very different from each other. So I'm just going to dive right in, if you don't mind.
Sure.
This one says, should payments that an eligible borrower made to an independent contractor or sole proprietor be included in calculations of the eligible borrower payroll cost? Right.
You can't include payments that are made to contractors in the calculation for your Paycheck Protection Program loan. You have to exclude those. So it's only payroll for the owner and the employees. If you're self-employed and you're a partner, in some cases you may have to make a separate application from your business. So as a quick example, I have a client that he's the partner receiving guaranteed payments from the partnership. The partnership has employees. The employees' payroll and not any contractors were included in that calculation. The owner, who was receiving guaranteed payments as a partner, has to make separate application under a separate Paycheck Protection Program loan. So you can't include 1099 contractors. And if you're a business owner and you're a partner and you're not receiving a W-2 from your business, then you're likely going to have to make separate application. So if you own 2 or 3 businesses, you may have 2 or 3 different Paycheck Protection Program loans.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. This one is taking us to a totally different direction. I need to request a loan to support my small business operations in light of the economic uncertainty. However, I pledged guilty to a felony crime a very long time ago. Am I still eligible?
Yeah, that's a little sticky. I don't think that you're eligible under the Paycheck Protection guidelines, but I haven't had that question asked from of me before, but I have read that, and that's what I recall. But to be certain, there's a FAQ, a frequently asked question PDF. If you go to SBA.gov, there's a PDF that tells you who is eligible. And you can determine that from reading that document.
All right. Well, thank you. We're going to share those in the comments again once more if you have any more questions. And please share those questions, share those comments. Okay, so are lenders permitted to use their own online portals in an electronic form that they created to collect the same information and certification as in the borrower application form in order to complete implementation of their online portals?
As it relates to the Paycheck Protection Program, actually, you found that many banks had online application portals. Some banks did not, and it was just kind of emailing forms back and forth. But each bank may come up kind of with their, the SBA has a standard form that can be used. But basically, they can automate that form, and they can take those applications right on the website.
All right. I think that they follow the same language usually. When they're creating those ones, they follow the same language that they that the government has provided.
Yes.
This one is a repeat question, but I think it's important to clarify. What time period should borrowers use to determine the number of employees and payroll costs to calculate their maximum loan amounts?
Yeah, it is important to clarify this because last week it changed. And, we don't know. Maybe in the future it will change as well. But previously, when the PPP first came out, it was over an 8-week period for which you could use expenses. Like you had to use that money received over 8 weeks. That has been extended from 8 weeks now to 24 weeks. So if you received your loan and you're past the 8 weeks and you didn't use it all, and so you were worried about forgiveness, you can continue to include expenses up through 24 weeks from the day that loan was deposited in your account.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It takes a lot of load out of our shoulders, right?
It really does.
And you can continue to apply for that one, even though you haven't fully spent the first one, right?
Well, if you haven't fully spent the amount that you received 8 weeks ago, you can continue to spend that same loan amount, but do it over the next, X number of weeks, up to 24 weeks until it's 100% used. And then you'll have that loan 100% forgiven. As long as 60% was used for payroll benefits, that's, payroll, contributions to 401k, health insurance, paid sick leave. As long as the payroll related benefit, 60% of it can be used for that. And the other 40% can be used again for rent, utilities, and mortgage interest.
All right. And then, okay, so this one says the CARES Act excludes from the definition of payroll cost any employee compensation in excess of annual salary of $100,000. Does that exclusion apply to all employee benefits or monetary value?
Yes, especially if you're a business owner, you can't include more than $100,000 in the calculation. So if you had, 3 employees that earned $150,000 each, you would include only $100,000 for each of those employees if that was what, if they received that $150,000 over the prior 12 months. So no employee can receive, sorry, you can't include any payroll and benefits above $100,000 in that calculation during that 12-month period. So
Okay.
it has to be $100,000 or less.
$100,000 or less. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. This one is, it's related to the last one that we had is about a, you know, if you contract with a third party, such as a payroll provider, or a professional employer organization to process payroll, does that also, you also report payroll taxes to? So the question is, if you contract with these, an eligible borrower contract with a third party, such as one of these, can you still process that?
That's a great question. And I got to say, frankly, I don't really know what the answer is to that. I haven't run across that, but I can understand why that would be a concern. If you're contracting that business out, you've got 1099 that you're paying that employment agency to hire those workers. Would they be eligible for the Paycheck Protection Loan, or would you? I would think that you would be eligible for that, but I can't tell you with great certainty because I haven't run into that language actually in the Paycheck Protection Program or any of the guidance that I've read. It's not to say that it's not there. I haven't really looked for it.
Where do you think we can find more information? It will be the same website, right? SBA.org?
SBA.gov.
.gov, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yep, SBA.gov. And you may be able to search, some of those PDFs are searchable. So you may be able to actually search Paycheck Protection Program and then actually search some of those documents for, professional employment organizations, PEOs.
So if somebody has questions, we're going to continue to have these small business expos, but aside of the website, if somebody wants a personal conversation, where do you recommend they will go?
I think the most important thing is, hopefully you've been in touch with your advisor and your advisor's been giving you guidance here. If they haven't been giving you guidance or communicating these things, you have to be wondering and asking, am I getting what I need to from my advisor? I'd say contact your advisor first, see if you can get some guidance from them. And if you can't, there's these resources that the library is sharing with you. I'd be happy to talk with you. I believe they're going to be posting my contact information. There is a lot of information and guidance that's out there and available. So there's no shortage of that. In fact, it's a little bit of probably overload. So you might need some help screening through some of that guidance.
I think that's part of the role that you do, right? Is screening through the information and making it more understandable.
That's my job.
Exactly. Now, have you seen? Is it helpful to have a conversation with your local bank too? They have kind of had to put these on the run too. As soon as they got it, they had to start moving and create things. And some of them were a little cautious. They didn't started offering the loans immediately. They were kind of making it with some guidelines internally. But do you find it useful to also just connect with your local banker, or would you recommend that you go straight just to your advisor?
Yeah, I think the local bank can be quite helpful. I will say that, as this program has progressed, I think the understanding has started to coalesce. When this program first started, different banks had different interpretations of how this was to be implemented because they weren't getting a lot of guidance from the Small Business Administration or the Department of Treasury. They just got the same thing that, I got, which is basically a copy of the CARES Act. There wasn't any other guidance out there. But I think over time, that understanding has evolved, and with clarifications from Department of Treasury and the Small Business Administration, with the 19th interim ruling, there's been more guidance available, and the banks are more aware of what the requirements are. And there isn't much difference between their understanding from bank to bank to bank. That wasn't the case initially, but I would say most banks are pretty up to speed with what can be included in the calculation. And they have worksheets that they send along with the application to you as a borrower to help you do the calculation. So you don't have to start and try to figure this all out immediately yourself, but they can give you the calculator and then you basically input, your total payroll for last year. It'll figure out the average. It'll multiply by 2.5. If you're, again, a seasonal employer, there might have to be some additional calculations, but there are some worksheets that they'll help you with, they'll send to you. And if you need help, your advisor should be able to help pull payroll reports and give you the additional information that you might need. You might not exactly know what your payroll was, or maybe you know what your payroll was, but you don't know what you paid in benefits. So there's other things that could be included in the calculation. Make sure you get everything that you can included in that calculation. And you might need your advisor to help you with that.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful to have an advisor. I have a couple of other questions, but I also wanted to connect with you in a different way, because you wrote a book, and I wanted to speak to our viewers and to our small businesses. Some of them have, maybe 300 and something employees, maybe a couple of dozen employees, and maybe one person, so there's all kinds of people there starting, and some of them have not gone through the whole process. And can you speak a little bit more? And I know that you have spoken before, but speak more about the value of establishing a relationship with an advisor. What does it take, and how expensive or not it is, and how does that look like?
Well, I learned from personal experience. My father was in business for many years. I come from a line of entrepreneurs. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, my grandmother, a lot of people in my family were involved in small business. But the thing that I noticed was my dad's business really hit some rocky road in 1991. And it was because he didn't have a good advisor. It's really crucial for you to have a good advisor to help you kind of see around corners, to see what those pitfalls are that may be coming down the road and help you plan for them. Or if they just present themselves like this coronavirus epidemic, that they're there walking with you through this time. This is a difficult time. And, for small business, when you make a mistake, at a minimum, it's a U-turn. At the maximum, on the other end, it could be completely devastating to you, your business, and your family. So, you want to make sure you've got good advisors. You get what you pay for sometimes. If you're not willing to pay for an advisor, sometimes that won't be very helpful. I think it's important to find the right advisor, and you do that by understanding how they communicate with their clients, whether they have good processes in place, and how you can engage with them. And that's a little, maybe not very detailed, but I give specific examples in my book, and I tell a lot of stories about why these things are important. I've been told the book's very easy to read, and it's not anything that's going to be over anybody's head. There's just good stories from experience in there, and it will help you find that trustworthy advisor, that advisor that's a broad-based expert versus somebody that's just focused in a silo. It's more important, I think, to get good breadth. You want certainly technical expertise, but you want good breadth to understand the differences and the impact, and how tax, financial, and investment strategy can work together. Because it's not what you earn in the markets, it's what you keep after taxes that's important.
That's right. And again, that your book's name is The Entrepreneur's Guide to Financial Wellbeing. You are a fee-only fiduciary advisor. So
yes.
You say in your presentation or when you introduce yourself that you're committed to placing your client's interest ahead of your own. Can you explain what's that, and what's the difference between other models?
Yeah, I think the word fiduciary is a word that's gaining some recognition out there. But simply, when you're a fiduciary, you have to think about what's in your client's best interest. You can't be thinking about your wallet. When you are a fiduciary, you owe, this is the legal definition, you owe a duty of loyalty to your client, not a loyalty to your employer or to selling a particular product, or to make a recommendation that pays you a large compensation. It's the duty of loyalty to a client. And there's advisors out there that are fiduciaries when they give advice on allocation, but not when they sell products. They switch their hats, and they're not considered to be fiduciaries in that. in that way, and that's confusing to the public. And so, again, in the book, I try to outline the different business models that are out there, so that you can find the business model that you think is right for you.
Thank you so much, Wayne. In the next weeks, we are going to have a number of people visiting us and sharing what they know and the services they have available. We will have somebody from the SBA here, the local SBA, that's Ed Garner. You probably know him. And he's going to be speaking also about a little bit about this subject as well. Please register for that. You can go to our events page, KDL.org/events, and let us know that you're going to be here. Every single one of the next events that we have, we will split it in two. The first portion will be a conversation with our presenter, and the next one you will be invited for a networking time via Zoom. So that's what we are looking ahead to. And just to close today, I wanted to ask you, Wayne, thank you very much again for sharing your wisdom and your experience for so many years advising others, and you yourself as an entrepreneur as well. We will have your information in the comments if anybody wants to connect directly with you. Also the name of your book. But can you close by, in a nutshell, sharing, how do you see this plan, this CARES Act that so quickly was put together? If you can, in a nutshell, explain to our entrepreneurs, how can you take advantage, the best way that you can do it, and what you should do today?
Well, I think if you've been harmed by this situation, and most businesses have, you should be applying for an emergency disaster loan. You should be applying potentially for the Paycheck Protection Program. Those two loans and programs work together. And many businesses were really concerned about whether or not they were going to be able to get forgiveness. Again, my perspective is, if you can use these loans to help your business reposition and come back stronger later, even if you don't get loan forgiveness, if it doesn't make sense to bring employees back and to do those things, you got to make smart business decisions and not just worry about forgiveness. So I'd say use those programs because they're low interest loans. If you don't need to use those monies right now, or you can't use those monies right now, they're still really valuable as low interest loans to help you reposition and be competitive in the future.
Well, thank you so much. Well,
it's my pleasure.
We have Brian again is putting a comment. Thank you, Brian. It says, this is fantastic. This program will help many people. Yes, we hope so. Our goal here in KDL is to be able to listen to your needs and what you are requesting, and align our resources in the library so that we serve you, the entrepreneurs, that bring the bread and butter for our families. If you prosper, we all prosper. So please connect with us. Let us know how we did. Let us know other topics that you want to hear, people that you would like to be invited, and join the conversation. And again, I thank you very much, Wayne, Titus, for joining us today, sharing your wisdom. And thank you so much for what you're doing with entrepreneurs here in our county.
Sarah, it was my pleasure, and thank you so much for the Kent Library System for allowing me to participate in this wonderful event. Thank you.
It is our pleasure. All the things that we plan to, some of the questions that were placed and answered in the comments for everybody to, if you want to join the conversation, even when the video is gone, you can still comment and share. You can share the video. Thank you both for a wonderful conversation, says Kent District Library. Thank you, Kevin, for being behind the scenes and helping us with this. And we hope and wait for you next week, where we will have a conversation with Hannah Schultz from Local First. Until then, we hope you're safe. We hope you are well. Thank you so much.